Welcome to Six Figure Trucker, the podcast where we share advice on how to be successful in trucking and have fun while doing so. We'll share stories, news, and advice on how to earn six figures in trucking, and we'll speak to guys and gals that are already doing so. Let's get to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. We always like to talk about all things trucking, particularly in the Driveaway transport world. And tonight we have a very special guest. He is on the road, Ernandez Robinson. Ernandez has pulled over for safety purposes, and he is joining us now. Ernandez, how are you?
I am awesome, John. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, doing great. Tell us where you are and where you're going.
I am somewhere in Illinois. But I'm on the way to Moreno Valley, California, and I'm about 60 to 70 miles outside of Chicago right now.
Gotcha.
On 94 West.
Where did you pick up?
I picked up in South Bend, Indiana.
Gotcha. So just outside Chicago there. Now, you picked up just outside Chicago. You're heading to Moreno Valley. That's a long run, as you guys in the business call it. That's a fat one.
It is.
Tell me what you're pulling.
I am pulling a world-famous Amazon tractor.
Are you decked tonight or are you single?
No, I'm single, and I have the pleasure of going 64 miles per hour for the next 27 hours of my life, and I'm looking forward to it.
a little touch of sarcasm there, I guess. Now, so are you in a CNG truck?
Yes, I'm in a CNG truck. This is probably my fourth CNG truck that I pulled, and still trying to get the hang of them. I do like them. The gas mileage is beautiful. It's still kind of high alert when you're fueling them, but overall, I do like the ride is smooth, and like I said, the fuel mileage is great.
What type of truck is it that you're driving?
Peterbilt.
Peterbilt. I mean, is it a cab and chassis or?
Oh no, day cab.
Day cab. Gotcha. Now, let's talk a little bit about, you're talking about you're regulated as far as how fast you can go with a CNG truck. Is that right?
Correct.
Now, you had touched on, and we know from past experiences, sometimes what is it like out there in the world of drivers as far as there seems to be at least some apprehension to CNG from drivers until they get used to it. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree. And it's an extra added layer of trip planning. You have to know where your fueling stations are, especially on a fat run, quote unquote, like I'm on right now. It's not, 600 or 800 mile run where you can plan for just one on the way and then you fill up. So with this one, of course, I'll need to fill a few times. And you have to have all that mapped out because with these, the CNG fueling stations, they don't come, a dime a dozen like regular truck stops or diesel pumps.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, that's an Amazon truck, and we move a lot of Amazon trucks here at Norton Transport, and a lot of those are CNG. And one thing that we found in another trial run we did for another company, cross-country CNG trucks that were much heavier than what you're driving this evening. But as you had said, you got to lay out your route, and it's not just where the CNG stations are, but what their hours of operation are.
Yes, definitely. And I've ran into that as well. Thank goodness, a lot of them, the ones I pulled the most have been to Raleigh, North Carolina, and that final fueling station is 24 hours. It's probably one of the first ones ever invented, but it is 24 hours, so, you have to give a little, take a little, but the hours of operation are extremely important. Like I said, these things, if they're not as frequent as regular fueling stations, you have to give yourself a lot of safety room as far as a few different options. And to add to CNG fueling, sometimes depending on the temperature outside and just the fueling station, you may run into like some that are not operable at the moment. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure you give yourself like plenty of wiggle room to have a plan A, B, C, and D when it comes to CNG trucks. At least I do anyway, because last thing you want to do on the road is be stuck somewhere.
Gotcha. I mean, that would be particularly troublesome with CNG, as you've laid out. I mean, you could break down, run out of fuel, be stuck somewhere. It's different with CNG than it is with diesel. It's not like you can have somebody just any, Tom, Dick, or Harry bring you CNG. Your resources are limited.
Exactly.
Now, talk about the planning. Let's kind of drill down in the planning on the CNG side of it. Do you drive a lot of CNG? You said that you've done 4 loads CNG?
Yeah, I've done about 4. I think this is my 5th CNG that I'm doing right now.
And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, you did your homework on this. And, there will be a lot of people, Driveaway transport drivers, that will listen to this that may not have driven CNG. And, there's a good side and I wouldn't say a bad side. You just got to do your homework and be prepared. What kind of things did you do to lay out your plan, A, B, C, D?
The first thing that I did is I have it's an alternate fuel app.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my most useful tool. So I have that, and then, I look at, my route. I'm a Google Maps type guy. Now,
You take Google Maps over Apple Maps?
Yeah, it's just some Google Maps, even though they kind of had me in some dead ends a time or two, I still have a trust for them. And then I kind of plug and play at least 2 or 3 options in that's on my route to where I'm going. And I just have them built in. And, like I said, the first 2 is where I had to find out the hard way. Really the first one. The second one, I thought I was good to go, but I wasn't. But the first one, I treated it as if I was driving a diesel truck or unleaded. And I ran into issue after issue after issue. The first 2 places I went to wasn't even business anymore. Third place I got to, the machine was down. So I went to a 4th place. When I went to the 4th place, I got there, and something was up for like EFS or something. So I had to go back to the 3rd place. And by the time I got there, the technician was there, and he got up and running. And I'm pretty sure at that point I was literally on fumes because it was showing zeros, like 0.0. But I did make it. It worked out in my favor. Thank God.
Well, you had the sun shining down on you on that one, because CNG is it's different from diesel. I mean, obviously you don't want to run out or get really low with diesel, but it's even worse, the way I understand it, with CNG.
It is.
Now, it's not just the preparation, but you've talked about some of the drilling down, the planning, get the route down, find the right stations, find the right time, what the hours of operation are. But the payoff, particularly when we're looking at fuel prices now, CNG, generally speaking, is a lot cheaper.
It is. I know Indiana area, about $2.76 a gallon. North Carolina, I think, is like $2.30 or something like that. So I'll find out sooner before later about the West Coast, Midwest, and West Coast prices. But it is cheaper, which is a beautiful thing, too. Different parts of the country carry a bigger price than others. But overall, it is cheaper. But the one thing that I still, try not to get too comfortable when I'm fueling them is still being super careful and making sure you have all, following it. They give you a very, very clear layout, processes of hooking up and when to start this and when to stop that. And it's just something that I'm training myself never to get too comfortable, because you don't want to, do a step or be lackadaisical when doing steps, because it is, natural gas, and you just want to be as careful as you can for yourself and people around you with other pumps.
You got to stay sharp.
You have to, definitely.
Now, with CNG, for maybe for some drivers who hear this who have not driven with CNG, it takes a little bit of time to fill up, depending upon the tank size, and the type of tank that's taking the CNG in. Explain how long does it usually take you? I'm sure it depends upon how many tanks you got.
It takes about 25 to 30 minutes for a full tank. And like I said before, depending on the pressures and the temperature, full is not always full, especially on the gauges. So the pressures you get to, I think it's 3,500 or 35,000 PSI, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but that's usually like full. And depending on, that takes about 30 minutes to go from, empty to full. Mm-hmm. And just depending on how hot it is outside, when gas expands, will be the tail of the tape on how much you get in that tank.
Gotcha. How many tanks are on that truck you're driving this evening?
There's one big tank on this one that I'm driving right now.
Gotcha. Ernandez Robinson joining us from the road just outside of Chicago on his way down to Southern California here on the Six Figure Trucker. Ernandez, we thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've talked a little bit about CNG, and we talked about the savings that you make at the pump or at the fill-in station for CNG. How would you say in your assessment, is it worth the payoff for what you save in CNG fueling versus diesel when you factor in everything you have to do with CNG as far as the homework, the planning? Is it worth it as far as, saving the dollars?
I would say yes. Yes, once you're used to it. When you're green and you're learning it, it could become extremely frustrating. But if you're taking them to familiar places and you have a route that you like to go and you have more familiarity, I would say extremely yes. Starting out, it can be kind of frustrating just because of, like I said, when you run into certain things, if you hadn't planned for those extra steps. But I will say overall that yes.
Gotcha. I mean, I would imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're on your fifth CNG load. You've probably started to get the tricks of the trade down on the CNG, and you know the paths, and it's starting to pay off
Indeed.
now. Yeah.
Indeed, I am. Yeah.
What would you say to other drivers? I mean, we've come across some drivers here at Norton Transport that are adverse to using CNG, but once they get on board, much like you, they're like, this is pretty good.
I would tell them just to, like any other trip planning you do your trip plan and trust yourself. I remember like I said, my very first CNG, I was like, once I was going through the headache, I was like, I will never touch another one. And now I look forward to them. Like I said, once you add your extra protective layers in for the fueling, anything outside there, I know I joked earlier about how slow they go. But it's really, that's not really a big deal. It keeps you in the safe lane, and you put a good podcast on, like, Six Figure Trucker or, something easy to listen to, and you just coast and you ride. But for any trucker that's apprehensive, it's like any other trip plan. It's just a couple extra steps, only to ensure that you're not sitting on the side of the road somewhere helpless, without fuel. But for the most part, man, it saves you the extra steps it costs you in the beginning. It saves you on the back end because you are not stopping nowhere near as much as you would in a regular diesel tractor or vehicle.
Well said, Hernandez. It saves you money in the long run, and that's money in the bank, and that's what we're here to talk about on the Six Figure Trucker. Ernandez Robinson joining us this evening here in mid-September. He is making his way from Chicago to Southern California. Now, how long does that run for you? About 3 days?
30 hours. Yep.
30 hours. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, are you a guy that drives in the day or the night? You mix it up? What's your pattern? Which one do you like to drive the best?
I mix it up, but for the most part, I prefer like 4 a.m. start times. That way, you catch the world before it gets too busy, and you get to utilize daylight. Just me personally, I've been driving almost 10 years. And I like to be able to see what I'm doing and see what's going on around me. The night is a whole lot more, peaceful. It's not as much traffic. Once upon a time, with so much night traffic going on now, you just never know what you're going to run into. But I like to see what's going on around me just for awareness. So I prefer, early morning starts and, tapering it off in the evening.
Gotcha. What's that early morning line as far as the feel, the vibe? I mean, you talk about getting started at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're up before most people are out on the road. Obviously, you got the advantage of the roads more open.
For me, I think that's the best time of the day. I love that time of the day, man. You get up and with me, I try to, put something more upbeat on to kind of get my juices flowing. And I'm not a coffee drinker, so, it kind of, I put something on, to kind of get me going. And that's a variety of things. Like I said, sometimes it's, listening to, a podcast or something that I'm interested in or music or a lot of times it's just in silence and prayer. You know what I'm saying? You're catching the sun that's coming up and you get to see a lot of things evolve. And for me personally, it takes your mind off like time. So if you have like a 10-hour run or whatever, those first couple hours go by so fast. But you at a regular day, by the time the sun comes up, kind of get to like cleanse your mind and just everything that's going on inside of you for those couple hours, while it's dark, and then you seeing it gradually turn to day. For me, it's just a real peaceful time, man, to get the day going, and it sets the tone. By the time 6, 7 a.m. come up, your family, you get to take a break and check on, what's going on at home to make sure everybody got their day going well and stuff like that. You are already fully awake and aware, so you're more sharper. And I think for my wife and kids, it kind of helps them because I'm calling them more upbeat. I'm not like, hey, what are you doing? It's more of a alarm clock for them as well. So I look forward to the early morning starts.
Ernandez Robinson here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. You were talking about those first 3 hours. That's really time you get to spend that brings you into that sense of calmness before, nobody out there really knows what the day's going to bring to them. But is that good time for you to set that position right in your mind and your soul?
Definitely. It is. Like you just said, you never know what the day holds, but it gives you a really, really great opportunity to dictate how you're going to handle the day, right? So of course, we're not the most respected people on the road. People, like to cut us off, and they're not patient with us as far as with our speed and stuff at times. So for me, those hours of being prepared while not as busy helps me out a whole lot with my attitude towards the road, So things that I may see at 2 o'clock in the day, I've already mentally prepared myself. A lot of times I can laugh now, but, before I've trained myself to get the demeanor and the calmness that I have now in trucking, it was different results. It was kind of like a lot of yelling matches inside the truck with myself from what the person in front of me did when they cut me off. But now the processing it is so much different, John, to be honest. It's more comical at this point, to see somebody cut you off because you've already built in the following distance. You already built like their mistakes into your day before you even see them happen. It's like a calm before the storm, for lack of better words, but it does give me a chance to already premeditate certain things that could happen for the day.
Gotcha. I'm picking up what you're putting down. You're striking me as a pretty chill guy, and you're not going to let that bother you. Somebody cuts you off, it's like you're just going to let it roll off your back.
You have to. You have to if you want to keep your blood pressure at a decent level, and the things that you can't control. You can only control, the machine you operating, and try to protect the space around you as much as you possibly can. Of course, it doesn't always work out that way. We see crazy stuff and stories every day, but at least you have a chance to be somewhat prepared and give yourself that extra half a second to react versus just rolling out of bed and getting going, and you kind of caught up in the mix of everything that's going on.
Gotcha. Now, if I heard you correctly, you do not drink coffee.
I don't. I've contemplated. I tried. I've been almost 2 years. I've tried numerous times, but it just
doesn't do it for you.
It never worked out. It don't.
What about energy drinks? Do you do any of the energy drinks?
I stay away from. I don't like the jittery feelings or the Red Bulls, the Monsters, and stuff like that. I like to feel natural. So the way I wake up is the way I like to go to sleep. And in between throughout my day, I like to keep that calm wave going. I don't like to get too high. I don't like to get too low. And for me, the best thing for me when I do get restless is just to pull over and take a minute, I'll set a 30-minute timer or hour timer just to reset, depending on where I'm at in the country. If I'm somewhere where it may look a little interesting, I'll pull over and, walk through a shopping center or something, or maybe find some souvenirs that I can take home, for the family or something. But that does me better than the energy drinks or the coffees and stuff like that, based off, the way my body is wired. But I have gave the coffee numerous chances. I'll fail. And the energy drinks, I just absolutely hate the way they make me feel.
Gotcha. Not for you. I mean, they're not for everybody, and that's
exactly.
That's respectable right there. Now, you had mentioned just a couple of seconds ago there about, when you're easing your way into the day, you're already alert when the rest of the world's waking up. You're kind of ahead of the game there for the crazy stuff you may see. Walk us down the road, Hernandez, of some of the craziest stuff you have seen in your, 10 years on the road?
Yes. Oh, man. The craziest was definitely in Texas. I think it was Laredo. And this was maybe year one of driving. It was a FedEx truck pulling a double trailer, and he was literally hanging off of the overpass.
Oh, my goodness.
How he got that way, I have no clue. But that's something that, of course, I, captured a picture of it. And it's kind of like a tactile reminder of just what you want to do at the end of the day. And that's, wake up, go to sleep the same way you woke up, safe and healthy, or if it's a day that you're going to make it home. I value that extremely high as far as making it back home. So that was definitely the craziest.
What part of the country was that in?
That was Laredo, Texas.
Laredo, you said, okay, Laredo. Now, was he in the cab or the driver in the cab when you came through?
When I came through, it was just emergency. They were, trying to clean up. I don't think the driver was in. They actually had the cab covered up. So that's why I don't know if it was deadly or not. But it was covered up to suggest that it wasn't all that good of an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely the craziest. I've seen a tractor on 95 towards like Charleston, South Carolina, that was in the wood on fire. And I mean, the truck was on fire, the trees were on fire. I don't think that one turned out too well either. That was at night. And you know what, I was just, leaves you with the $1 million question of like, what happened? Did they fall asleep, or were they on their phone? Or, what I'm saying? Just like, did they get ran off the road? It's not always drivers that are negligent. But yeah, I have seen like just some crazy things with others drivers, and even with myself, I've experienced some really interesting things.
Does that resonate with you when you see stuff like the FedEx double trailer hanging over the overpass and the truck that you just described that was on fire? Does that hit you right there? It's like, that could be me.
Oh, of course, it has to. But I don't think I'm any different than whoever that was, and one thing I'm sure I can guarantee, you and anyone listening to this, is whoever that was didn't plan on that happening when they woke up that day. So it definitely resonates, super intimately, because you just, whatever they did or didn't do could definitely be any of us that are doing the same job.
And you kind of touched about it indirectly there, about starting off early in the morning, getting your mind right, getting your energy right, getting your vibe right before you hit the road there. When you take all that into perspective there, what do you think about when you set off on, like, let's say the run you're on now, a 3-day run? What kind of things go through Hernandez's mind?
My wife and my kids, my family, everything that's important to me is the first thing, and getting right, within prayer and within yourself, because it's the thing, those are the things, the big things, but the small things that kind of like wake you up when you feel, like, okay, I'm getting kind of tired, so I'm not going to be selfish and think about myself and try to drive this extra 30 minutes or an hour. I'm going to go ahead and find the safest place to pull over now. So those are the things for me that keep me, that's part of my pre-planning. So, for instance, for this trip, this long run today, I started out with a FaceTime, just to kind of, see the faces that are important and that I hold near and dear. And that is, that's worth more than the 30 hours that I'll have to drive this trip. And it's a constant reminder of being on your P's and Q's and, not taking the small stuff for granted on the road that can cost you or someone else their life.
How many, you've got more than one child. You got a few of them, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I have I got a starting 5 plus a reserve. I have 6, 3 boys, 3 girls.
Split right down the middle, 50-50.
Yeah, 50-50. 3 years old, 4 years old, 13, 16, 18, and 19.
Well, that could bring you a range of experiences there. You were talking about the FaceTime. Who do you FaceTime with, and who do you FaceTime with the most?
My wife and the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old. The other ones are too cool. They FaceTime with Dad.
Yeah, they don't want to hang out with Dad then.
No. I'm the least coolest person until it's time for like money or something. But my wife, she's always around, for a minute or two of FaceTime, and then with the two younger kids, and we try to on long runs, we try to do it a couple times a day just to just make it feel more like at home instead of a super over the road driver.
Gotcha. What does a 3-year-old, the 4-year-old talk to Dad about FaceTiming when you're in one of those big trucks?
About candy or what they want that they probably saw on like YouTube or stuff. It's some tattletelling involved, and it's just a very wide range of things that they don't have a care in the world that the real world hasn't really started existing yet. So that brings you joy too, and kind of is like an extra little energy drink or cup of coffee in itself. Because after that, you have no choice but to kind of wake up a little bit and finish the task at hand.
A lot to be learned from the wisdom of children there, not to be worried about it.
Definitely.
Now, give us the ages on the boys and the ages on the girls there, what as far as they stair step up.
From youngest to oldest, 3-year-old girl, 4-year-old girl. So 3-year-old girl, Erin, 4-year-old girl, Erica, and oldest is also a girl, and that's Ariane. She's 19. And then my boys are youngest to oldest, 13 Andres, 16 Torrance, and 18 Hernandez Jr.
Gotcha. Now, do any of those boys or any of those girls, do they want to follow in Dad's footsteps and get behind the wheel of the big truck?
Absolutely not, John. I mean, not to my knowledge as of right now. Well, the two oldest have graduated high school, and they're, they all are well-behaved and well-mannered kids. And so the two oldest have graduated for the past 2 years, 2021, 2022. And Hernandez Jr., my daughter, the oldest, she works. She graduated from an early college program, so she graduated with her associate and her diploma. And she works, and she'll start back school for teaching in January. And my oldest son, Hernandez Jr., he's in college, and I wanted to gift him this past summer for a graduation gift to send him to get his CDLs. And, like I told him, I said, hey, man, you can have them, and you have something in your pocket that's a career, not a job. Right. And any time in life, it's recession-proof. You can always go to that. And like most 18-year-olds that think they know everything, your parents know that you was like, well, girl, I don't want to do, So I said, okay, we'll try this other thing that you're talking about, which is college, which I'm not against. But if you don't have scholarships, if you're not going for free, it's some debt that you can accumulate that you really have to be dedicated. And he seems to be focused and locked in so far. I've only been, a month and a half of school. So I hope he stays encouraged and hardworking, and, if that's the path that he wants to take, I'll encourage him, as much as I can. But the long of the short of the answer, none of them seems interested at all. The younger girls, they like to see the truck. So, Daddy, you in this? Yeah, but probably in the next couple of years, that'll wear off and they'll be bored with it like their older sibling.
Now, from your standpoint, where your oldest son, Hernandez Jr. there, did you want to see him follow in your footsteps, or are you more like, I'm going to support him whatever he does?
You know what? It would have been nice, and I kind of took it personally at first, like his senior year of high school, trying to kind of plant seeds and water them. Maybe I flooded the land or something when I was trying to water the seeds, because I may have wanted it way more than clearly he did, because he wanted it all. But it would have been nice, especially something like Driveaway, like the Norton. That it's one of the, I've done a lot of different avenues in driving since I had my CDLs, and this is by far the most laid back. I don't want to use the word easy because it is hard work that goes into it, but something that you could do that the stress levels are not super high. And I did want to see that for him. Not to say that the path that he's taken, won't present the same luxuries and be just as laid back. But I really did want to see him go in the direction because the family that I was brought in, from my grandfather and a lot of relatives have been truck drivers and are truck drivers currently. So I did want to see that as far as my lineage, my boys pick up the CDL and run with it as well.
Ernandez Robinson joining us here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. You were talking there a little bit, not to toot our own horn, but you were talking about it's not so, it's hard work, but you don't want to get too stressed down. And, you kind of strike me as a guy that sets your own vibe, sets your own pattern, lets, the prayer life and the get in tune with what's going on in the day. And how does that couple up with what you do here at Norton as far as the attitude that we try to give to our drivers and the kind of support we give to our drivers to let them, set their own course?
Well, it aligns really well, especially with communication. Fortunately for me, my dispatcher, Jessica Albert, we're pretty transparent with one another. So as far as pickup dates and deliver dates, we try to be dead on with them. And the same thing, this is life. So sometimes things may change, whether it's on my end as the driver or the customer that you're picking up from. So as far as with my personal experience with Norton and the day-to-day, my dispatcher and myself, we always, try to be on the same page. And that way it prevents the little pop-up fires that occasionally come, but they don't happen as much, and we already, have a rapport on. She knows how I like to run, and it's not really like a super big check-in. And I assume, and I hope my assumptions are correct, that just because of the trust that's already there, it's not like, well, where the hell was he at, or why, So, we touch bases in the beginning, and if anything changes, we touch bases with one another. But for the most part, it's real smooth sailing.
We love Jessica here, and she works really well with the drivers. And we've had, actually in a separate podcast, probably about a year ago, one of the drivers referred to the relationship, and he was talking about Jessica in this particular case, as a Tom Brady to Gronk kind of relationship.
Right.
I don't know if you're a football guy, if you're a fan.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see that kind of parallel as far as the relationship between you and your dispatcher?
Oh yeah, it's super important, and it has to be somewhat personable to where because we're human, and when you're human, no day is the same as the previous. So you have to know that the person on the other end of the phone or the person that you have to have interactions with, they may not be going this way or maybe going that way, and to learn like a person's like habits or what time, I don't, for me in my relationship with Jessica, I always, try to wait till about, 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning just to give her a chance to get settled in, because like most of the time I know she's super busy and I don't like to bombard. So, it's like, knowing your personnel, like in sports, anything else, most of the time just like to shoot a text, even if it's like not me wanting anything, hey, good morning, Jess, XYZ, what's going on. And then that may be all the communication for the day. But it's super important to have that relationship established, kind of no tendencies on both ends. And it's helped us so far. Like I said, I really do feel that it's a building trust that we've evolved to at this point, and you just want to keep it going.
Being a sports fan and what you've laid out there as far as the trust and the relationship, being on the same page, kind of making the sports analogy, it's like you're the quarterback or maybe you're the receiver, she's the quarterback, you're the receiver. How important is it to complete the pass to make that work as far as it relates to Driveaway transport and everything that's entailed within it? I mean, that kind of communication and, back and forth between you and the dispatcher.
It's the most important thing to complete the pass. An incomplete pass is a fail. You're going to have some of those naturally, but you want as few of them that you can possibly have, of course. So completing the pass and, making each other look good, because I know on her end, she have account managers and different people on her end that she don't want to be chewed out for something that she's like not fully in control of. Because once you dispatch the load out, you really are, you're not in the truck. So if somebody, not performing and doing what they're supposed to do on their end, can be a reflection of you. It's super hard. Like I said, I did do operations for a while, briefly when I got out of the truck. So I can empathize and super relate to how that part of the business is. So I know how important it is. So, once you're under a load and, both parties say, okay, this is what it is, that you stick to that blueprint as best as you possibly, just to keep, things copacetic on both levels.
Gotcha. Ernandez Robinson joining us here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Ernandez, talk about, for somebody who may listen to this on the podcast there and they hear it, what would you say, what's your best advice to a driver coming on board, let's say a new driver or maybe somebody coming from another company, as far as how would you approach that relationship you build with your dispatcher? It's a two-way street.
Well, the best advice I could give is to be a person of your word. I think that's the very, very ground base. And of course, respect when you're communicating and you're talking to a person, especially, for me, I'm the type of person where our first interaction for the day, I want to say, hey, how are you? Good morning or good afternoon, how you doing? Just to make a person feel like they're human and to be, personable. Like I said, you never know what a person's going through in that moment. So taking that time out to, first break the ice with, a very, very, human element that's super important, and ask the person how they're doing and, hey, call them by their name, make it feel personal. And then after that, whatever it is that the hand is, just trying to be a person of your word and stick to that as best as you possibly can. And that would be the advice, the best way to build that rapport is just the initial trust, when you start like not making pickups or but things do happen, so I don't want to not sound, and they've happened on my end, and Jessica will be the first person to tell you that, it's been times where, it's like, unfortunately, in this day of time with us and driving and traveling, a flight might get canceled or, you may take a load and you find out that the place that you're going doesn't have Ubers or the cabs may be $200, for 50 miles. And you realize that may not be the one for you. But of course, you try to make those few and far between. But just starting out a good rapport and being a person of your word is the best thing that I could advise anyone coming on to us to encourage them as far as with the relationship within the company and definitely with your dispatcher.
You made some really good points there, talking about some real issues, real challenges out there in Driveaway transport, flights and rental cars. Rental cars are really tough to come by these days when you need them, depending upon your location. And, that's bread and butter of our business. We depend upon them. How do you manage that? Obviously, I think anybody who's listened to this knows that Ernandez Robinson's got a very even-keeled temperament. You kind of roll with the punches, let it go off your back. But, let's say you're headed to Southern California, as you are now, and there's not a rental for you for the next location or your next pickup, and you're kind of stuck. Which happens particularly when you go to remote locations. How do you deal with that?
The first thing I do if I have to, whenever those times happen, like I said, they don't happen every week, but they do happen. And the first thing I do is like take a deep breath and remind myself of the things that I can't control, right? So, you get somewhere and the rental falls through or the flight. Once it's out of your control, it's on the plan B. You can't get hung up in the moment too much. Of course, take the time, soak in it, and then move out of it as quick as you possibly can to the next best solution, because clearly that solution is not going to get you to the next spot or home or wherever it is that it was planned to do after that. So, definitely soak it in, because it's a learning experience. So you soak it in and you say, okay, if I'm never back here, what would I do different? And then after you recognize that, you have to come up with a plan that's going to get you out of that same spot. So you really, for me, I don't ever sit in the moment too long. Now, don't get me wrong. It don't stop you from being pissed off,
Sure.
but
You're a
um,
human.
you're human. Yeah. So you do go through that emotion, but you can give yourself, that moment to go through that emotion. And then you have to, be super proactive on what you're going to do to remove yourself from that situation. And it's Driveaway, man. Driveaway and trucking is super unpredictable. It's been times where I've been stuck in, the middle of Tennessee for hours and just wondering how in the hell am I going to get, to the next spot. And things always work out. But it's just the nature of the beast. And, some things are just unforeseen no matter how much planning you do.
If you're joining us here on the Six Figure Trucker, you're listening to Ernandez Robinson, one of our drivers here. He's been on the road for 10 years. He's doling out some great advice here for anyone thinking about coming into the business, or even for people who've been in the business, about his attitude about approaching it. And when things come up that you can't control, there's no reason to stress out about it. And what would you say to someone who may be considering this, as we talked about, where you'd kind of thrown it out to your son earlier when he was, I guess, about the age of graduating from high school? What would you say to people who may be in that time frame in their life, that season of their life, or maybe a little later, or maybe in some job change, maybe looking for something different? What would your advice be to people as far as what relates to Driveaway transportation, Driveaway trucking?
Well, a person that's self-driven and want to do something where you feel that you have the freedom and the independency to kind of, call your own shots and kind of do things at your own pace that you can be well compensated for, I would encourage, Driveaway and a company like Norton. It's super. I think it's so underrated, and when you meet people, tons of people all across the United States, and from Uber drivers, or just if you're grabbing a bite to eat, or just in a parking lot or whatever, you meet tons of different people, and people jaws stay on the ground when you tell them about like what you do. The industry is, even though we have like a fair share of people doing it, it's still so untapped. And, I always encourage people, like, I definitely think you have to be self-driven, because, you don't just have people go on your phone up every day saying, hey, this has to go here, this has to go there at this time. So if you have a engine that you can self-start within yourself, like Driveaway and a company like Norton is awesome, because everything's at your fingertips. You go on, you do your research as far as this is going here and that's going there, what kind of unit it is. And, certain of us, we like to stay away from certain units. I mean, because everything ain't for everyone. But if you have that self-start and you want to, kind of feel the independency of, working, somewhat for yourself, it's great, man. I would always encourage him, which is why I tried to encourage my son to kind of tap into this lane. And at 18, you never know. You're still learning yourself at that young of an age. So
Sure.
It may be something that he revisits, at another point in life. But for someone that's, looking for a different career change, and I met those people, man, that, was doing something totally different, not even driving, and now they're, Driveaway driver. Matter of fact, my barber, he was cutting hair, and now he's a Driveaway driver. So
Hey, we've seen all types.
It's super beneficial for those of us that it's for.
We don't force dispatch here at Norton, but we do like to find a synergy with our drivers. And you were talking about Driveaway and how it can be profitable. What's it done for you here on the Six Figure Trucker? What's it done for you, Hernandez?
It has definitely provided comfort for my life and my lifestyle. I'm a man that likes nice things, and I have a family that likes nice things. I mentioned I have 6 kids, so you don't take care of them by just looking at the sky and waiting on money to fall from it. Having a kid in college, and that's a struggle. That's a weekly to a couple times a week struggle of needing this, needing that. So it's definitely provide the financial and monetary thing that that you like, different little trips, or like my wife's birthday is next week, and being able to do a nice thing for her as far as the monetary aspect of it. But it's also provided like a super peace of mind as well for me. I try to set my weeks up for like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So since we do have young kids, I try to have Monday and Friday, which of course there's an exception to every rule because it's Friday and I'm on the way to California. But we try to have our, household set up to where I can be home that Monday and Friday to, navigate the things. My wife's a school teacher for her, longer days and stuff like that. So the money is great, but it also provides a peace of mind and a luxury kind of setting that schedule in your work week to where it, really fits what you have going on within your own personal life.
Gotcha. How do you navigate that? You kind of touched on it. You like Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But how do you navigate that as far as like, okay, this is going to be X amount of hours on the road. This is going to be X amount of hours with the family. How do you negotiate that or navigate that?
It's just communication. It's communication on the home front on, what the week can look like. And, if there's certain runs I see on there that like I can't too good to pass up, I say, hey, sweetheart, what do you think about this? And if it's like, clearly like today, today's Friday, I'll be gone through the weekend, won't be back home till, Monday evening. You communicate, in full transparency and you find whatever options you can work out that you wouldn't normally have to resort to if you was at home. So fortunately for us, we have a great support system and we have, my mother-in-law and, a lot of great people that we can lean on when, our older kids, when I have to be out a little, on days that we hadn't specifically planned on me being out. But, this is life. Life is about on-the-fly adjustments, and we have to make them sometime. But, as far as for, myself and the way that, my family, we do it, we just look at what's best. Of course, you don't want to let a good opportunity and get money for a great brand to pass you by because it's set in your way with X amount of days, So, sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone and just move in what's relative and what really makes the most sense for your situation.
Right. It's a dance. It's a balancing act.
Of course.
Now, Ernandez Robinson joining us here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Wanted to ask you about the Robinson family vacations. Now, you talked about obviously family is important to you. You have 6 children spread between, I think, 3 and 19. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Now, do you guys take vacations all together, or are the upper half of the siblings there, the children, do they not go with you anymore? Or how does that work out?
That's a funny question. I'm glad you asked. But so 2 weeks ago, we took a vacation. It's the end of the summer, and then my 4-year-old just started school. So I've been promising her all summer, that I was going to get her to the beach before school started. Where I was a week late, but we still got there. So the conversation went, we were calling the older kids and asking them, okay, hey, we're going to the beach, this day, who all is going. And all of the older kids said they didn't want to go. And, so my daughter, I guess being like elder statesman of the crew, she was like, well, Dad, we really didn't want to hurt y'all feelings, but I told her, I was like, well, I didn't want to hurt y'all feelings. That's why I offered for y'all to go, but I didn't. My feelings ain't hurt because it's going to save me a lot of money for y'all not to go. So the wife and I and the 3 and 4-year-old, we had a really, really good time, and the bill was a lot, less than what it would have been. And so, it's definitely something to get used to when your kids grow up. And I don't know if you can relate, but it's when they start turning that corner of independency and the things that, that they used to find super exciting, they just really don't care too much about for it.
Yeah, Dad's not cool anymore.
No, definitely not.
Well, that's fantastic. You guys were able to have that trip, and it was, save you a little bit of money. But this is not going to drop for a little bit. You can go ahead and tell us. You said your wife's birthday is next week?
Next week.
I mean, she won't hear this before the birthday happens. You got something special planned for her? Got something special planned for her?
Yes. Yes, we are. We're going to a concert in Columbia, South Carolina, which is, I live in Charlotte. So it's about an hour and 20 minutes to drive from our home. So we're going to a old school R&B concert. And after the concert, I have before we get to the concert, I have a hotel room for us.
Oh, nice.
So we'll check in on Saturday, afternoon, and kind of relax and
Ernandez doing it upright with the wife, doing it upright.
You try to, man. You gotta keep those ladies happy.
Absolutely.
What they say, happy life, happy wife, and
mama's happy, everybody's happy.
Definitely. So definitely wander down there, and then we're just gonna enjoy ourselves. Kids, when you have younger kids, and whenever you can't get away and let your hair down, you have to do it, and you have to do it with on purpose, with full intentions, just to have a super good time, and everything else is gonna still be waiting on you when you get home. So next weekend, we'll have a super great time, and we'll enjoy it. And I've learned a long time ago. I've been married for 5 years. It ain't about me. So on these days and any other day, I just try to be a team player and go with the flow. But next weekend, I definitely plan on making it all about her.
Good deal. Who's the R&B act you're going to see?
We're going to see Jodeci and Jagged Edge. It's called Jodeci and Friends. So the R&B group Jodeci, they're from Charlotte, and they have sold a lot of records, worldwide. And we both came to a mutual consensus that they're not what they used to be, but we love a lot of their music. So we'll still get to go and sing along, even if they're old and washed up. We'll still have us a good time.
There you go.
We won't have the kids, kind of interrupting us. So that's going to be the great thing. Yeah.
Longtime fans here. Ernandez Robinson joining us here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Wanted to kind of wrap it up here, but, we talked a little bit about the analogies to football, and we know you're from Charlotte. What do you think about the Baker Mayfield acquisition?
Okay, so this is kind of weird, but I'm from Charlotte, but I'm not a Panthers fan. I'm actually a Tennessee Titans fan. I was a East New Orleans fan with Eddie George and Stephen there. So
okay.
I have to throw it out there first. But as far as Baker goes, I think it could be good. I mean, it's definitely bringing the Panthers some attention and energy. There was a super heartbreaking loss last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, kind of some calls that maybe shouldn't have been called were called, and some that should have been called weren't called. But I do... I'm kind of like abstract to certain things. So I like Baker because he is definitely different. He marching to the beat of his own drum. And, sometimes you do need that. I think you just kind of, sometimes you outgrow a place and it's time to move on. And I think that led him to Charlotte. But I think he'll do good things in Carolina. And, that is the home team. So I definitely wish him the best.
Gotcha. Speaking of the Carolinas, we're going to wrap it up here with an Ernandez Robinson here on the Six Figure Trucker, brought to you by Norton Transport. Ernandez, we thank you so much for joining us. It's guys like you who make a difference in the Driveaway transport industry in the world there, and we certainly appreciate you joining us this evening. And be safe out there on your run from Chicago down to Southern California.
Definitely. Thank you. I had a blast.
Absolutely. Right back at you, Ernandez. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time on the Six Figure Trucker.
Six Figure Trucker is brought to you by Norton Transport. Norton Transport is a drive-away trucking company that customers can rely on. It offers excellent independent contract driving opportunities to professional, courteous, and qualified drivers that can provide the kind of service we deliver. If you're interested in learning more about Norton or just want to subscribe to the show, check out 6-figuretrucker.com. That's 6-figuretrucker.com.